What's up YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. This channel is for photographers to get some tips and tricks on photography and the business in photography. The videos in this series have been all about the exposure triangle, and this is part 3 of our 3-part series. This video is going to be all about ISO. Okay, so before anybody gets really confused, what is ISO? Technically, it stands for International Standards Organization. You do not need to remember that, it's got absolutely no bearing on your photography. What the ISO actually is how sensitive your camera is to the light. So unlike shutter speed and aperture that physically controls how much light comes into your camera, ISO controls how sensitive your camera is to that light that those two are allowing in. In the days of film, this would always be controlled by what type of film you are using. So the ISO would be on the film, so you'd either have a reel of ISO 400 film or you'd have a reel of ISO 1000 film. This now has been made a lot easier with our DSLRs as we control that in the camera, just like we control our shutter speed and our aperture. Now we know what ISO is, we need to figure out how we can change it on our camera. I've put a little video together, but if this doesn't help you, then maybe go on Google and search how to change your ISO and then your camera model, or get your manual out of the box and have a quick look on that. It's a little bit trickier than changing your shutter speed or your aperture, just because the settings tend to be a little bit more hidden, mainly because we just don't use it as often as the other two. What does ISO do to your photos? Honestly, not a lot. Other than making it brighter, it doesn't have any creative way of changing your pictures like shutter speed and aperture did. So you'd think this would make it really easy to just keep it at however helps you with your exposure. This may be true, but what ISO does do is it can decrease the quality of your image. Usually what we'd say is try and keep it as low as your camera can go. This will give you the highest dynamic range, the most detail in your picture, and the lowest amount of noise. If you're wondering what these all mean, these just mean the quality of your photo will be better. The noise in an image can kind of look like an old television when you used to not have any signal and you get the black and white fuzziness. If you have your ISO too high, you'll get this effect in your image. This may be what you're going for, and if that is the case, then go ahead and bump up the ISO and have a grainy image. I've got a quick example here of a few pictures I took with different ISOs just so you can see the difference in the grain. This will make it clearer what I mean by you losing quite a lot of the detail. I did this on a sunny day, so I couldn't whack my ISO up too high. What I was taking a picture of didn't have that much detail in, so the grain isn't that obvious, especially in a video. But if you were taking a really detailed shot of a landscape, that's when the sort of grain becomes a lot more obvious. You can see a difference on the image quality. This is why we recommend trying to keep the ISO as low as possible. Your camera probably can go to an ISO of about 100. All cameras are different. This could go up really super high, or it might not go up as far. Also, what will change the amount of grain and damage ISO does to your image is your camera. Obviously, the higher end camera you have, the better it is going to be at coping with high ISOs and obviously combating something like grain. The cheaper cameras are going to struggle more in low light photography. This is just the way cameras are. If you have to use a high ISO because you need more light in an image, just watch out. Try and keep it as low as possible, otherwise you're going to get some really grainy images and you're going to lose a lot of the detail. Sometimes we might have to start controlling our ISO is when we are maybe using it handheld, so can't use a tripod, or we're trying to freeze someone in action like at a sporting event. You can't have a really long shutter because you're going to need to freeze that person in action, even if you're using a tripod. If this is the case, then you are going to have to bump up your ISO, or maybe you would want to bring your aperture a little bit wider, so a smaller f number, so you don't have to bring the ISO too far. Every camera has different ISO abilities. What you're going to have to do with your camera is test it out, try increasing your ISO bit by bit and see where the cutoff would be for you, where you're just too unhappy with the noise and the grain of an image that you just would write off the image. Some types of photography are going to need a much higher ISO than others. If you're trying to shoot a nightscape and you want to get those stars, you're going to have to increase your ISO, otherwise you'd end up with a shutter speed of hours and hours and the stars would be all over the place. This is the style of images, and if you want to get the stars across the sky, having a really high ISO isn't going to be necessary because you can have a shutter speed of a few hours. If you have picked the exact shutter you want for your desired image and the exact aperture you want or need for your desired image, and it's still too dark, this is the point where you would increase your ISO. It's not always feasible to have a tripod or a really narrow depth of field. This is when you would increase your ISO. We just want to remember what your camera can cope with and what is going to be just too high. It will ruin the image for you. I've created a few images here of all the settings being the same except the ISO, so we can see exactly what effect changing the ISO has on the amount of light in an image. So we can see exactly what the effect ISO has on how sensitive the camera is to light and how bright the image is. So as you can see here, I didn't have to increase it that much for it to have a big change. Okay, well thank you very much everybody. That is the end of our exposure triangle series. I hope that was helpful, and if you've got any questions, let me know in the comments below and I'll get back to them straight away and I can help you out. If you like this video or this series, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and we've got loads more videos coming soon. Thank you very much. Bye. High ISOs. Try and say that 10 times fast.